Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Well, man, Donald Trump, the failed boxing promoter, is in hot water. Now, for those of you who didn't know, he's been indicted. Now, for those of you who also may not have known this, a lot of people think Donald Trump was this successful boxing promoter. But, word on the street is that he wasn't as successful in boxing as he thought he was. People have even gone as far as to coin him as the failed boxing promoter. But, boxing promotion can be a murky business, man, just like politics. And I'll tell you what, Donald Trump at one time offered himself as a financial advisor to Mike Tyson. And if you didn't know, he promoted a clutch of the world's biggest fights and names in the late 80s and early 90s. So crazy is that he even suggested Tyson's, and you guys remember Mike Tyson had the rape conviction, right? Which I have my opinion on that, but anyway. They suggested Tyson's rape conviction and jail sentence could be held over so the heavyweight could fight Evander Holyfield, with the proceeds from the richest fight in history going to rape victims. That just shows you how much pull and power that Trump had during the 80s and 90s. That didn't happen, but it almost happened, for those who didn't know. Now, we know boxing is a cutthroat world of deals and smokescreens. And Donald Trump learned that with the quickness, because a real estate mogul, he excelled, in certain areas. But I'll tell you what, man, trying to teach him kind of what it takes to be a successful promoter. Many people in the industry said, look, he just, some things he didn't want to listen to. Now, business partners and rivals such as promoters Bob Arum and Kathy Duva have both told people recently that Trump burned them financially, manipulating a deal with them as a site host for a fight between champion Holyfield and challenger George Foreman in Atlantic City back in 1991. Now, octogenarian Las Vegas-based promoter Arum claimed he and fellow promoter Dan Duva, who's the late husband of Kathy, were swindled out of $2.5 million. Trump walked away with the profit. Kathy Duva says that Trump was a natural promoter and that she even learned a lot about the process of selling and hyping fights from him. But although he was a successful promoter and talker, he ended up not doing that well long-term as a boxing promoter. Now, indeed, watching the U.S. elections, which we all watched, Duva and Arum said it kind of reminded them of some of the things that Trump was able to do as a boxing promoter that got him some success. And she said the way he promoted himself into the presidency is the way that he was really promoting himself his whole life and even his attempt at promoting fights. She said he could say things and it would sound completely outrageous, but by the time he got through with it, it was the truth. Now, Trump fancied himself as a fight promoter, but it didn't last. The business really is hard. He couldn't make it as a boxing promoter. Think about that. But he's the president of the United States. He was the president of the United States considering a second run, which we all know that second run may be up in the air now that he's been indicted. Now, Trump went on to write a book called Art of the Deal, which was a bestseller. In that book, he says the one thing he learned about the press is they're always hungry for a good story, and the more sensational, the better. He says he calls it truthful hyperbole. It's an innocent form of exaggeration and a very effective form of promotion. Now, at his pomp in boxing, Trump even offered himself as a self-styled business advisor to Tyson during the World Heavyweight Champions litigation with his manager, Bill Clayton. It was a clear conflict of interest, given that he was also the site and event promoter. It never bothered Trump. At the time, there was a loophole there, and Trump was happy to exploit it. Kind of sounds like Al Heyman being the advisor but he's really promoting and managing. Yet Tyson has endorsed him, so too Foreman, and indeed Don King. Now, these guys, if you ask Foreman about Trump, you ask Don King about Trump, you ask Tyson about Trump, they speak very positively about him. But there was one person named Thomas Hauser. He was Muhammad Ali's official biographer. Now, he cited Trump as a mentally unstable narcissist with fascist tendencies. He said when he spoke, and that's what he told one of the writers for the New York Times. This guy Hauser even had a tale about Trump and Ali. He said he was at dinner with Muhammad Ali in Atlantic City in the mid-1990s. He said it was at the Trump Taj Mahal, which became the Taj Mahal after it went bankrupt. He said it was a celebratory dinner where Muhammad Ali was honored. He says they were sitting at the table as Donald Trump, and halfway through the evening, Muhammad Ali leaned over to Hauser and said of Trump, "He's not as big as he think he is." And that's one of the times when Hauser says when Muhammad Ali's views and his views were right. It's too bad the American people didn't get that message. Now, the thing about it, right? Trump isn't that big. This is something Muhammad Ali said back in the 90s. Well, I tell you what, the legal system is proving that Trump isn't as big as he thought he was. Because I tell you what, Donald Trump being indicted by the Manhattan grand jury, he became the first person in U.S. history to serve as commander-in-chief, which is the president, and then be charged with a crime. That's a problem. Now, the indictment remains under seal, so the specific charge or charges have not been made public. And I can't wait to find out what those charges are. Here's what we know so far about the charging decision and the next steps in the criminal proceeding. So, when someone is indicted by a grand jury, it means they are charged with one or more crimes. An indictment is just a fancy way of saying the charging document. Now, it's a piece of paper that contains the charges. The grand jury, which in New York is composed of 23 members of the public, hears evidence from witnesses presented by prosecutors over a period of days, weeks, or months. And at the end of that process, prosecutors decide whether to ask the jurors to vote on an indictment. A majority must vote to indict the person. The grand jury process is secret, and the indictment is generally not made public until it's filed in court, or in some cases, until the defendant makes their court first appearance. Now, as far as what's the case about, the indictment against Trump is believed to involve a payment made before the 2016 presidential election to Stormy Daniels, an adult film actress, to keep her from publicly discussing an affair she said she had with Trump years earlier. Now that he's charged, is he going to be publicly arrested? Like, that's what everyone wants to know. Is he going to be arrested? Is he going to be put in cuffs? You see people out here on social media who are celebrating, they're cheering. I mean, guys are having Trump indictment parties, like they've just really taking it to the stupid, right? But Trump posted on social media on March 18th that he would be arrested. But that won't happen if he voluntarily turns himself in. And that's the key. A spokesperson for the Manhattan District Attorney said Thursday that the office had contacted Trump's attorney to coordinate his surrender. A person familiar with the matter, speaking on the condition of anonymity to discuss plans that have not been publicly announced, said the former president is expected to appear in court for an arraignment on Tuesday, April 4th, so next week. Now, what happens once he's in custody? Well, once a suspect who has been indicted is in police custody, police or other law enforcement officials process them behind closed doors, taking mug shots and fingerprints. The process is identical whether the person has been arrested or has agreed or negotiated through lawyers to turn themselves in. The first court proceeding after an arrest or surrender would be an arraignment hearing in a Manhattan courtroom. At the arraignment, a judge would determine whether Trump would need to pay bail or adhere to certain restrictions pending a trial, or whether he could be released with no bail or restrictions, which is known as being released on personal recognizance. The Secret Service Special Agent in charge of Trump's security detail, Sean Curran, or Curran's deputy, is likely to personally accompany Trump when he is processed and appears in court. So who's the prosecutor who brought charges against Trump? Look, I don't think anybody really cares to know all that information, but just know Trump has been investigated, and they're trying to get him. They are trying to get Trump, man. And he's probably going to end up being detained And as far as the question, can he go to jail? Look, that's the question a lot of people are asking. The answer is it depends. Not only what he's charged with, of course, but also of what, if anything, he is ultimately convicted on. Listen, Trump going to jail, I don't know. He can be convicted of a felony. It doesn't mean he goes to jail. You know what I'm saying? Could get probation. He may not get anything. But can he still run for president in 2024? Look, man, Trump is allowed to run for president while under indictment, or even if he's convicted of a crime. Right? The practical impact of a criminal case on his candidacy, whether it would help or hurt his odds of landing in the White House again, depends on who you ask. So the thing is, Trump could end up running for president, and there's nothing anybody can do. That's just how the law is. You know what I'm saying? But that being said, Donald Trump, this man was involved with boxing heavy from the 80s to the 90s. A lot of those big fights that we watched, man, Trump had a lot to do with it, man. But at the end of the day, Trump got himself in a little bit of hot water. We'll see if my man can swim. We'll see if he's going to sink, or we'll see if he can run on top of that water, and we'll see how far it goes. But for anyone out there who thinks this man's going to jail, there's no guarantee of that. We don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, the failed boxing promoter, he found himself in a situation that looks like that money, at least as of right now, wasn't able to get him out of it. So we'll see what's next for Donald Trump. That being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. I'm in the breeze.